This is Hemant.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. Please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast. Leave us reviews, whatever it is you want. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing okay. It's Friday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to go out. It's cold. So
yeah, it's kind of nice out. Before we get started, I wanted to announce a new podcast that I just put out.
Ooh.
It's called Cooper Duper. It is a journey through Twin Peaks. It's my husband, who is a diehard Twin Peaks fan, and myself, who has also seen the show. We're just doing an episode-by-episode rewatch and discussing it, and it's sort of meant to be both for people who like it and for people who have never really watched the show before. It's very much like how I liked reading a lot more in college when I would then go to class and kind of discuss what was going on. It helped me, keep on track. So anyway, yeah, it's just fun. It's very casual. The preview episode is out right now. And then I just have a little bit of editing to do on the pilot podcast. And they will be out weekly. We haven't decided on a day, but we're kind of making this up as we go along. So subscribe to Cooper Duper on iTunes.
Very cool. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a huge accomplishment. Starting a podcast, nobody can do that.
Nobody. No one's ever done it before.
Yeah.
No, it's all good. Good luck.
Thank you.
Do you want to talk about Jim Bakker?
Yes.
You do.
I do.
Televangelist Jim Bakker, you do. He, apparently, we just found out today, had a stroke.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And they said he's taking a sabbatical from his TV show, which, okay, wishing him best because I don't want him to die.
Sure.
At this, mostly for his
scary
family.
Time to have a stroke, too.
Yeah. Now, here's the flip side of that, because this week, his legal team also, which, by the way, is like being led by the former Democratic governor of Missouri. I don't know why, but there you go. They told the judge, because he's been under attack for good reason, because he keeps selling this silver solution that he claims cures everything from like venereal diseases to HIV. And then one of his
coronavirus.
One of his guests on the show said it also cures coronavirus within 12 hours.
Oh.
And that's a lie. And he had attorneys general from New York and Missouri coming after him. And so he stopped selling it after they were getting close to him.
Mm-hmm.
But this week, his legal team filed paperwork that basically said, and I want to make sure I'm getting this right, they basically told Missouri's Attorney General Eric Schmidt that he's being unfairly targeted by people who want to crush his ministry and force his Christian television program off the air. Mm-hmm. And it says he did not claim or state that silver solution was a cure for COVID-19.
Sure.
Yes, did while he nodded.
Yeah, he just said it was a cure for HIV. So, what are you all mad about?
And the lawyer said this case is about religious freedom. I guess Jim Bakker has the religious freedom to sell bullshit to people. This is what Jay Nixon said. Jay Nixon is the former Attorney General of Missouri and the former governor of Missouri, and now, showing just how far you could fall, he is Jim Bakker's lawyer. Jay Nixon wrote, "Similar silver products are commonly sold health supplements available at Walmart, Amazon, CVS, and GNC. Targeting a Christian pastor who has been using and offering the product for the past 10 years is not supported by the facts or the law." But just to be clear, that product may be sold elsewhere. No one else is saying on the packaging it cures coronavirus.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask. Is like there's a lot of garbage that's sold at CVS or whatever, and like they famously sell homeopathic quote unquote remedies, and that's not effective. And I feel like people who care about this thing have been working to like exercise that shit from the shelves for years. So
or at least get them to print on the packaging, "This is bullshit.
This is not real medicine. Don't buy it."
Exactly. But that is still different. And again, Jay Nixon, you would think, given his past as a governor, attorney general. He knows that.
Yeah, he should know
just
better.
lying because that's what happens when you represent a televangelist. My favorite part is the lawsuit itself included a declaration from Maricela Woodall, who's the president of Jim Bakker's ministry, and basically was saying, like, yes, we did this for good reason, and I'm not Jim Bakker, but I support what he did. She wrote, an integral part of this expressive ministry and practice, as well as the doctrinal teachings of our religion, in like basically saying this is part of our faith, includes educating our partners, their donors, concerning and offer them products, including Silver Solution, that we believe have been made available to this generation by God.
Oh, wow. That's quite an ending.
Yeah. So he's selling Silver Solution in giant glop buckets of food because God told them to. And if you tell him to stop selling it, you're telling him to stop preaching God.
Sure.
Like that's where she's going with this. So all that happened like 2 days ago. And today is when we get the declaration that he had this stroke. And all I'm hoping for is, okay, let's assume those are not related to each other. I hope no one gives him sympathy from this fraud that he's perpetuating because he had a stroke. Like that, fine, wish him well. That has nothing to do with this. Go ahead and keep prosecuting him. I'm genuinely afraid they're like, because it seems like something Jim Bakker would do, which is I had a personal...
I'm a sick old man. Don't pick on
Lay
me.
off me. He's 80, by the way. Like, he's pulling the I'm old, don't come after me card. Like, no, he needs to be held accountable. The stroke should be separate from that.
Yeah, that's the fun thing about white men getting older is either it's an excuse and don't come after me, I'm just a frail old man, or I am wizened and I deserve 25-year-old girlfriends and money.
Yes. And Jim Bakker is his wife said on Facebook, don't worry, he already has a message ready to preach when he comes back.
Okay. I mean, do we know, is he gonna recover? Do we know anything about what's going on with him?
Yeah, this is what Lori Baker, who is also his co-host on the show, this is what she wrote on Facebook that's relevant to what just happened. We are thankful that Jim is okay and that he is now at home with our family, ... He's taken a sabbatical from the show. Jim will be back. He is still dreaming and hearing from the Lord, and he already has a powerful word to deliver when he returns to the air.
Okay.
Sure. Okay. Totally normal thing.
Well, I hope he gets better, but I also hope that he stops preaching bullshit. So,
which will not happen.
No.
And usually a stroke will change people. I can't imagine it changing what he does. Lying.
And there's also the whole he always says these are signs for God or from God rather. So was this a sign from God of God saying hey dude, fucking chill with the bullshit. You're doing bad. So
if it happened to
you down.
If it happened to Obama or something, that's exactly what he would be saying. But when it happens to him, nope, total coincidence. Nothing,
oh my God. It's funny how health works, huh?
And notice that nothing in Lori Baker's Facebook statement said Jim Bakker is taking Silver Solution to help him with the
I was
stroke.
wondering that myself.
Yeah, somehow it works for everything except that. Yeah. Okay, this is something that I didn't have the details for until this week, but it's fascinating. So, okay, the government has been giving out those Paycheck Protection Program loans. And if maybe you've seen this in the news, it's basically if you're a small business, the government's going to give you money to tide you over for a couple months so that you don't go out of business. And the idea is if you apply for a PPP loan, you could theoretically get 2.5 times your average monthly payroll, and you don't have to pay it back as long as most of that money, like 75%, goes to pay your employees and not used for rent or utilities and stuff like that.
And there's a caveat, right, about not letting employees go too, as well.
I think that's part of it, yes. And of course, the big scandal in the news has been why have giant restaurant chains like
Ruth's Chris.
Yes, and
Shake Shack.
Shake Shack. Why are they getting money when they are by no means a mom and pop small business type of operation? Okay, here's a different scandal. Among the many businesses that have signed up to get this money are thousands upon thousands of churches. So there are 17,000 Catholic churches in the US. More than 12,000 applied for the money, and they're getting it. And This is from CBS News. They're saying, according to the Catholic Church officials, around 6,000 Catholic parishes had their applications for funding approved in the first round of PPP, and around 3,000 had received loans so far in the second round. Mm-hmm. So that's 9,000 out of the 12,000 that applied. And in terms of Protestant churches, same deal. This is from Lifeway Research, which is, I believe, affiliated with the Southern Baptist Conference. They said nearly a quarter of Protestant churches have applied for money, and more than half of those have received it, which is, again, a shit ton of churches. Even Jewish organizations, the Jewish Federations of North America says 573 Jewish organizations got loans for a total value of $276 million. So again, here's the rules as the government puts it. They said we're giving these the money to small businesses. They're eligible for the loan, but also they're eligible for nonprofits. So if you work with a nonprofit small group and you got to help your employees so you don't go out of business, you can apply for the loans. That's why churches are eligible to apply. But of course, there is a difference, though, and we've said this before when people say tax the church. The nonprofit businesses, it is a good thing that nonprofits are not taxed because they provide a service even if you don't like the service. Right. But the difference is that churches, unlike, say, Planned Parenthood, churches do not have to tell the government how much money they're taking in, how they're using it, who their donors are. They do not have to be transparent. And that's still the case with the PPP money. So they could say, hey, we have $2 million worth of salaries we got to pay out. Give us that money. I don't know that there's any way for them to verify any of that. They could just say, this is what we need. There's no way for the government to be, for the churches to be accountable to the government. And that's the issue. That's why they're different from a nonprofit. None of these churches have to say the money's actually going to employees because they never have to say how they're using the money. There's no way they're going to be held accountable for any of this. Yeah,
and it makes me wonder what the process is in place to verify who gets loans and who doesn't, because ostensibly you would think that if I'm a small business applying for a loan, I would have to open my books and be like, this is what my payroll looks like. This is what my rent looks like. These are, these are my profit margins.
That is what normal nonprofits have to do. That is what churches do not have to do.
Yeah, it's not great, Hammett.
Andrew Seidel, an attorney with the Freedom from Religion Foundation, wrote an article today in the Cap Times in Wisconsin. I'm going to quote a part of it dealing with this because I thought it was important. Because they entirely lack financial transparency and accountability, churches are already rife with fraud and abuse. Churches qualify for CARES Act funds, that's the PPP loans, even if they have never registered as a church with the IRS. Receiving these funds could be literally both the first and last time the government ever hears of them. And he goes on to say taxpayer funds should only be available to nonprofits that file financial information with the IRS, ... Otherwise, Congress is handing out taxpayer money with no accountability whatsoever. That is the problem with this. Again, I'm not even saying churches shouldn't be eligible for the money because they do have employees, they do have mouths to feed, and a lot of people are employed by those churches. I don't want them to suffer. So I'm not against them getting the money, but they are playing by different rules, and that's the problem with this.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of this always comes down to accountability, like whether or not you and I personally think that churches should be tax exempt or whatever is one thing, but I just really the least I want is accountability. And we've seen churches time and time again dodge any kind of accountability, whether it's from taxes or lawsuits or whatever. They play by their own little rules. So until they want a handout from the government, then they're happy to like be part of that team. I don't know. It's also, just to be clear, and this applies to nonprofits too, but again, playing by different rules. Churches pay no taxes, but they are now getting tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer money to further their proselytizing work. Right.
And they don't have to tell the government what they're going to do with it. There's no way to verify that it's going where they claim it's going. And again, they should never get the benefit of the doubt here.
Right. Well, it's funny because people are so up in arms about Planned Parenthood getting taxpayer money because, we don't know what they're doing. And even though we very much do know exactly what they're doing. And so the fact that most people don't seem to be batting an eye at the fact that like, these churches are getting our money. And literally, like, if the Catholic Church is getting money, that means taxpayer money could be going to pay out lawsuits for sexual assault allegations or rehoming. That's not what it is, but moving around priests who are guilty of that. Like, we just
it could be going anywhere. It could be going to a casino for all we care. The point is they don't have to verify it. So I don't think it's weird to assume they're going to do the worst possible things with it because we've seen them do bad things with money.
Right.
All I'm saying is be accountable. Let the government know where it's going. And the government, again, I wish I could say the government needs to hold them accountable to it. But when Republicans are the ones in charge of the purse strings, of course, they're going to give away money to churches.
Yeah, it's such a mess.
Okay, different story. This is in New Mexico. There is Sierra County, which is a rural part of New Mexico. And there's a sheriff, Glenn Hamilton, who last weekend visited a local church in full sheriff regalia. That in itself is a problem. Like, if you want to go as yourself, that's totally fine. But when you're wearing your, like, I'm the sheriff of this town and I'm going there to basically preach, that's a problem. But anyway,
I'm not sure I understand. Did he go in to preach or he just went to attend church?
Oh, no, he was speaking from the pulpit.
Oh.
He's given a sermon.
Okay.
While wearing his sheriff garb. But here's what he said to the people. Like, out of nowhere, he just kind of says, if there is any churchgoer, let me back up for a second. In rural areas like Sierra County, they don't always have enough people to do law enforcement. And so it's not necessarily weird when law enforcement officials say, hey, we need volunteers to help us out, and we'll give you some level of authority in order to help us out because we need the help. And in rural areas, that's not weird. Okay, so he goes to this church, Glenn Hamilton, and here's what he says to the Christians in the audience. If any of you are I'm paraphrasing, if any of you are willing to do it and help us out, I will deputize you right now. You are all deputies now, deputy law enforcement officials.
What?
Just willy-nilly, no background checks as far as I can tell or anything. Oh, and by the way, I'm quoting now, I guess one of the benefits of what we just did here is that under the governor's order, like lockdown order, law enforcement is exempted from her order. Oh, hey, so that lockdown order that says churches can't gather more than like 10 people in one building or something like that, that does not apply to cops. And all of you are now deputies, which is something I have the power to do. So isn't that interesting? And then he goes on to say, it's not my intent to like override the governor. But he did, sure, sir? Yeah, but he did say from the pulpit, hey, by the way, this is a thing you can now do.
Oh my God.
And then he goes on to say, I am not in any way, shape, or form attempting to minimize the impact that has had on our state and on,
once again,
the pandemic.
Are you sure you're not?
Wait, here's the kicker.
No.
But the reality, folks, is that we're all going to die.
Man, oh man, the pro-life set really went pro-death like fucking flip of a coin.
We're all gonna die faster because of guys like him. And again, he says later, like the reporters are like, why did you deputize all those people? And he says, well, we have to put down riots and other acts of civil disobedience, which is the thing that...
Of randos is the group you want to bring in?
Riots don't happen in the middle of nowhere, which is where he lives.
We have to wait, tell me again where he lives.
Sierra County, New Mexico, which is a very rural part of the state. It's not where the big cities are, so they don't have riots or civil disobedience like you would in a bigger city.
Here's the other thing, is the only people we're seeing who are either, quote, not rioting, but protesting with their big fucking guns are the people who agree with him. Like none of us science-minded believer people are rioting because we're all fucking at home.
Yeah.
Whoa.
But this guy made them all deputies. I should say the Freedom from Religion Foundation has sent a letter just saying you can't do any of the stuff you just did. So send us a response saying you won't let that happen, which is pretty much all they can do right now, unless someone is willing to go further. But that's what's happening in other parts of the country. Like, that's what it is to be a Christian. Not only do you just get these magical law enforcement powers without having to do a thing, you're allowed to spread the virus to whoever you want, and they'll just let you do it. They'll reward you for doing it. Because, again, why did he make them all exempt from the orders? Right. So they can gather in church, which will hurt people.
Yeah, I think the thing I have noticed more and more with what's going on now is I think there are people who maybe haven't necessarily dealt with systemic hardship before. And so now that they very much want somebody to blame. And so in our state, people are going like fucking batshit going after Pritzker, saying that he's overstepping or trying to take us over. But I think just people are having a trouble differentiating between I'm sad or mad because this thing has happened, and I'm sad or mad at this thing is happening, and it's this person's fault. Because I feel like that's what's going on here is they're mad at their governor or whomever for saying you need to stay home. The governor didn't do this thing to you. The governor is trying to help you. The governor did not construct this virus to mildly inconvenience a bunch of people in fucking New Mexico. I guarantee fucking to you that. And that's just the thing I've noticed a lot is when people are angry, that's not new, right? We're looking for a scapegoat. We're looking for somebody to be angry at. Whereas I've dealt with hardship before and it's usually nobody's fault. Usually just shit happens. And so you just have to ride it out. Have you, I had this whole theory that I've been talking to Mikey about of, the people who are doing relatively okay in this versus the people who are going fucking batshit.
Who's doing okay?
What's that?
Who do you think is doing okay?
This is just in my sort of experience and the people I've talked to, it's all anecdotal, but it seems like my friends or people who have spent some amount of time being broke or disenfranchised in some way are for probably a collective 2 years of the 10 years I've been with my husband, one of us was out of work or we were broke. And so we just didn't really leave the house. Obviously not for this reason, but just because every time you step out your door, you're spending money. And when you don't have any money to spend, you just stay home. And so Mikey and I have no trouble amusing ourselves. It's really not been and obviously we don't have kids and shit like that. Obviously there's genuine circumstances, but it just seems like it's people who have never had any restrictions on anything they've ever done are not dealing with this well because they don't know, they don't have the self-discipline to just not go to a place. Anyway, that's my theory. I'll be writing a thesis on it soon.
It is, I've watch Christians blame everything on Christian persecution, but this idea that the travel restrictions people are taking because of the virus is a form of Christian persecution.
That's a wild stretch. Yeah. That is a wild stretch.
Overly silly.
Yeah.
plus the governors doing it are Christian themselves usually.
Right. Yeah, I mean, people are just looking for somebody to blame. We've scapegoated people as long as we've been a society, and this is a hard thing to scapegoat right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't get why any governor would want to shut down any of this stuff if they had a choice. As if they have a choice.
I keep seeing that kind of thing of like, oh, the governor or the mayor or the president or whomever is shutting everything down so they can take control and they can steal your civil liberties and they can do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, well, the economy is in the shitter. People are unemployed. Like, nothing is happening. Like, if they wanted to somehow take over, quote unquote, the economy, wouldn't they not maybe like not tank it first? And like, because if anybody's trying to quote unquote take over like the state of Illinois or the country or whatever, okay, well, congratulations. You now have a zillion people on unemployment. You have a bunch of people in debt. You have like companies closing down. Like, have fun, I guess. This sounds like a really cool society you're trying to take over when nobody's working and nobody has money and nobody can go outside. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't get the persecution claim at all. But okay, so since we're talking about Illinois, let's talk about what's going on here. There is a pastor named Stephen Castle of the Beloved Church. It's in the city of Lena, which is far away from most of humanity. Yep, Lena, far away from humanity in Illinois, but like very rural part of the state. But they have church and they draw usually like 80 people a week. So after Pritzker in Illinois issues a stay-at-home order, he then amended it more recently, saying people can leave for essential activities like grocery shopping if you need to. Churches were not on that list. And then people went ballistic. And so he said, fine, churches can meet as long as you're following social distance precautions, as long as attendance is not more than 10 people. And Castle, this pastor, is still furious about it. Because again, they have to feel persecuted or they have no reason for doing anything. So he files this lawsuit. Like, no, churches should be able to do whatever they want. They say if Walmart can have more than 10 people inside, why not my church? Not realizing Walmart actually helps people and it has groceries and stuff you actually need. And you can live stream a church service. You can't live stream groceries.
It's not like anybody shut down churches and said you can't practice your religion. Nobody can be in groups of more than X or whatever we decided. Nobody can be within 6 feet of each other. That's everybody. That's just not you, friend.
But the judge in this case, it's wonderful. The judge in this case just shut down all those arguments this week. And it doesn't mean that this is over yet, but I want to read part of what he wrote. So he says, this is Judge John Z. Lee. He writes, the purpose of shopping is not to gather with others or engage them in conversation and fellowship, but to purchase necessary items and then leave as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, he goes on, like, religious services involve sustained interactions between many people. Given that religious gatherings seek to promote conversation and fellowship, they endanger the government's interest in fighting COVID-19 to a greater degree than the secular businesses. So that's one thing. But then, and he also says, like, looking at the order issued by the governor, it doesn't single out religious people or communities of faith.
No shit.
So that's another thing. But then my favorite, he basically, I'm going to paraphrase first. He says, you don't need to meet in your building to have a service. And you know who says that? The Bible. Here's what the judge writes. Plaintiffs, as Christians, can take comfort in the promise of Matthew chapter 18, verse 20, for where 2 or 3 come together in my name, there am I with them. Saying like, look, if 2 of you gather, you got a church. That's what Jesus said. It doesn't matter where you are.
So good.
Usually I'd be like, I don't like judges citing the Bible in a ruling, but I'm okay with that one.
I thought it was going to be something about how like the Sermon on the Mount took place outside, so you can have church outside or something like that. That's very good.
Yeah, I liked that response. That was a good one. Let's go to another story about people just saying stupid things in the week.
Okay.
This is from
quite a transition.
I think we talked about this last week. I can't remember, but Ohio State Rep Nino Vitale, he was the guy who said, I'm not going to wear a face mask because God created us in his image.
Oh, I do not think we talked about this.
Yeah, that's basically what he said. And I guess a mask would stop people from seeing God because...
Is that why he doesn't wear clothes too?
That's a good question. And like, you know that you could still see their eyes, right? Like it has nothing to do with anything. So, I mean, this guy got roundly criticized online and on late night TV, whatever, because he's stupid.
Yes.
But now preacher Andrew Womack, who has his daily YouTube show called Truth and Liberty, because they love those words.
Oh, love those words.
Yeah, he said something along the same lines. He's like, I don't know that they have a constitutional right to require you to wear a face mask.
You know,
Though he did say, like, I can see the practicality of it. But then he goes on to say this. You know, we're supposed to see ourselves in Christ. And I just can't even picture Jesus wearing a mask as he goes around and praying for people. It just doesn't compute for me.
I can't picture Jesus wearing high heels, but like women still wear them.
Yeah, or glasses or skinny jeans or sneakers. Like, and churches are full of pastors that wear all of those things. And yet, you know, Jesus didn't wear a face mask, therefore, why should we?
That's too fadoofa. That's a lot for me to deal with right now, Hammett.
Yeah. Which virus is more harmful, the COVID-19 or religious people who have no critical thinking abilities?
That's the thing. I'm seeing a lot of people being like, the government can't tell you have to wear a mask. And like, yeah, that's absolutely true. But like, Walmart can. You don't have a constitutional right to be in a Walmart.
And pretty much all the laws say in the name of public safety, the government can tell you to do certain things or not do certain things in the name of that, as long as they're not singling out anybody, and they're not. That's the point. Like Christians, the conservative Christians like pretending we're singling them out for any of this, and it's not. You could read the orders. Right. I'm going to get to a silly story before I get to the more serious one. Ark Encounter is struggling because they have no money.
Sort of. And God, Hammett, we're going to talk about Ark Encounter.
No attendance. I don't care.
I'm leaving.
Don't care. Ken Ham just said they're bringing back their lifetime passes for Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum. It's anywhere from we've talked about this. How much does it cost to bring your family? Let's say 2 adults, 2 children, like, who are teenage. Mm-hmm. How much would it take to take your family of 4 to Ark Encounter for one day?
For one day?
1 day.
Let's say 40 per adult, 20 per kid. So $120 all day?
160.
Okay, listen. That was a pretty good guess.
Not a bad guess. That's a lot of money for that. But okay, he's now selling lifetime passes to both Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum. And how much is he did this when he was trying to fundraise for the Ark itself, and he hasn't done it since. Now he's bringing it back. The lifetime passes include passes to both those buildings, Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum, free parking, which gets expensive, a handful of guest passes.
I'm sorry, is parking a huge problem in the middle of Nowheresville, Kentucky? Is that something we need to be concerned about?
If you went to Ark Encounter, you would have to pay an additional $10 for parking.
Brother.
Yes. So you get free parking, you get a few guest passes that don't include parking. You also get a year subscription to Creationist Netflix and a few other things. And honestly, this is the only part I'm like, you could have just said this. He says by purchasing a lifetime pass, you'll be helping to sustain the ministry during this time our attractions are closed. If you just said, look, we're hurting right now, we need cash, I would have understood that. He didn't. He's like, I'm giving you this bargain.
Yeah.
So how much does it cost for our family of 4 to go for this lifetime pass?
So is a lifetime pass per individual?
Total for your family.
For a family of 4?
Pass. Yes.
I'm going to guess for a family of 4, it's $1,000.
$1,000, because if you go like 4 or 5 times, now you have recouped your costs.
Right.
Right. No, 3,000.
Fuck me. Seriously?
Yeah. And if it's just you, because you have a weird Ark fetish and you alone just want to go, that's 2,000.
What?
You would have to go, if you're the family of 4, you would have to go like 18 times roughly to make it worthwhile.
Wait. You really skipped over an individual pass is $2,000 and a family of 4 pass is $3,000?
To be fair, the family pass would also include the Duggars. Like, you bring your family of 18 kids, you're still under the 3,000. Yeah.
That's
3,000.
Oofa-doofa, that's a lot. That's so much money. And nobody has money right now, Ken Ham. We're all broke.
Creation science is bad. Creation math, holy crap, it's even worse.
Shit.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to a very serious story. Cardinal George Pell, he's the guy from the Catholic Church, highest ranking Catholic in the hierarchy, to have been sentenced to prison for child rape, for child sexual abuse.
Right.
And remember when he was... Yes, and when he was going through the trial, his lawyer basically said, come on, he didn't molest a kid or anything. It was just, and I'm quoting, and I have to say that, I'm quoting, it was just plain vanilla sexual penetration case where the child is not actively participating. That's his lawyer. He was found guilty.
These monsters.
Yeah. He was found guilty and he was sentenced to jail for not nearly enough time, but he was sentenced to jail. And then we talked about this last month or a couple months ago? The Australian High Court basically overturned that ruling. So he was set free. That was a problem. We've discussed that. He is now on the loose. But here's an interesting thing. A few years ago, there was a Australian Royal Commission set up to basically, this was the government's way of saying, here's a third-party commission. They have the legal authority to issue subpoenas and whatnot. Get to the bottom of sex abuse in our country when it comes to the church. Find out who knew what, find out how many victims there are, who's involved. Basically what some attorneys general in the US have been doing when it comes to the Catholic Church, like in Pennsylvania. And they issued this report in 2017 that was damning like crazy. And it also had a lot of suggestions for how the church could move forward from there. Big news at the time, big deal. But in that report, there were about 100 pages concerning George Pell that they said, we are not allowed to release this because he's under trial. Like the trial's happening right now. We cannot, I guess, taint the trial or something. Sure. So they couldn't release it. Well, guess what? Now his conviction's been overturned. He's out of jail. The trial's over. Oh. And so now they released those 100 pages. And we get to find out what the Royal Commission knew about George Pell. And what did we learn from that? Here's what we learned. George Pell was aware of children being sexually abused within an archdiocese by a notoriously pedophile priest named Gerald Ridsdale. And they said it was, quote, implausible that other senior church figures did not tell Pell that abuse was happening. Basically saying there was abuse happening in his circles. There's no way he did not know about it. And he didn't do anything about it. So
essentially, in addition to he himself being guilty of child molestation and rape,
which he's now off the hook for,
which is cool and definitely how the law should work for sure. He was not only doing it himself, but he was aware of other parties doing it and did nothing to protect those children. So what we're saying is the entire Catholic Church is a fucking racket and a shelter for pedophiles. Is that a fair assessment of the Catholic Church right now?
You're being too kind. The report actually went on to say, we do not accept that Bishop Pell was deceived intentionally or otherwise. Like, there's no way he didn't know this was happening. And I kind of bring that all up to say the church has no credibility on moral issues. Don't take them seriously when it comes to moral issues.
That sucks. That's so sad. Those poor children.
Yeah, it was disturbing. I had one last story that I want to talk about because it is a little happier, but it's an interesting thing. So one of the things that happens anytime there is a poll taken about religion by any of the major groups, atheists, you might have noticed, there's never like an atheist category. Like, how do atheists think about this? We're always lumped in with the unaffiliated, the non-religious, the nuns, because at least the demographers are like, well, people who have no organized religion may feel the same way about certain issues. And by and large, that's true. But we also know that the nuns are mostly full of people who do believe in some higher power, just maybe not a traditional faith.
And maybe don't necessarily go to any kind of religious service, things like that.
Right. So
they're spiritual.
They're spiritual. They are the people who make everyone else roll their eyes. So now this is the question, like, well, what is it that atheists believe, or the non-religious who are not spiritual? What is it that they believe? And we don't really have any polling, at least big time polling, that offers our perspectives on stuff, mostly because it takes a lot of money to do a survey like that, where you would have to randomly call people or randomly find people and weed out the people who you don't want in the study and get enough data for it to be meaningful. So last year, American atheists set out to actually do that. And the way they did it is they had, I believe, secularsurvey.org or something. The U.S. Secular Survey was online, but they basically asked anyone they could to spread word about it. And so it did ask some basic biographical questions like gender, age, race, all that stuff. And, what label do you use? They also asked, I don't know, it was a variety of questions, but they asked everyone who's willing to take it. And they weeded out the ones who are clearly not taking it for the right reasons or anything. Okay. But basically, it was a way to say, look, this is a way we can try to gather data on atheists. Is it scientific? No, because not everyone's online who might have found this thing. But it's probably but it is the closest we'll get to a picture or a snapshot of what atheists in America think like, look, seem like, all that stuff. So you can read their full report. I'll put the link in the show notes. But they found a few different things. One is, what label do non-religious people like the most? Okay. And it turns out, like, pretty much non-religious is the label that is most popular among everybody.
That tracks.
Non-religious, not atheist, which had actually, I think atheist had a higher percentage overall. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to, like, do you identify with this label? Not the non-religious is the one that people said very much. Yes, I identify with non-religious. But if you include the somewhat, I identify with it, atheist is a little higher. But those two are right at the top of the list. We're talking about 80% of the people who answered the survey said, I'm very much fine with non-religious. Mm-hmm. At the bottom of the list, with only 35.1% support, 35% support, agnostic. No one calls themselves agnostic relative.
Really?
Yeah, very unpopular, at least among the participants.
Interesting.
Here's one that surprised me. Who do you hide your non-religiosity from? And they basically said, in these situations, do you never hide your non-religiosity? Do you always hide it? Mm-hmm. Who do you think they said, yep, I always hide my non-religious identity from these people?
I would say employers or in-laws.
So people at work was in third place with 20% saying I always hide it from them. Uh-huh. Extended family for in-laws was fourth place with 19.3%.
Okay, so I didn't even get the top two?
Nope.
Okay, so presumably what, close family?
Family of origin was in fifth place, 10.7.
Okay. Neighbors?
Not on the list, I would say.
Okay,
friends,
so
I'll take that back. Friends and acquaintances was sixth place, 3.9%.
What other people are there?
I know, you're family feuding, you're losing.
I really am. Okay.
Number two is not fair. Number one, you might be able to figure out.
Okay, number one, is it like, like, I'm trying to think of the word that would be like, you're kids' friends' parents or something like that. Like,
I would say that's under friends and acquaintances.
oh, fuck.
So maybe. Okay, number 2 I'll give you because I don't think I would have gotten this either. Strangers. You just don't tell people you don't really know. You're not going to tell them you're an atheist. That was at 24%.
Have they met white guys on the internet? They will tell anybody they're an atheist. No. Okay. I hope it's not like spouse.
Not spouse. Spouse you would probably
Children?
tell. People at school.
Okay, I was in the neighborhood I was thinking more of like an adult with kids as opposed to somebody who is personally at school. Okay.
Yeah, I was actually surprised by that. I would have thought work is the place you definitely don't share it, which is the first thing you said too.
Yeah.
I was surprised that like your school, like even in college, you're not telling your...
That's wild. That's when I told everybody that I was an atheist.
Yeah, right?
I was 21 and just like, people need to know my opinion on things.
Which thankfully the internet is now here. Also interesting is among the people who took the survey, most of us grew up in religious households. Like more than 50% grew up in Protestant Christianity. Mm-hmm. Only 14% grew up in non-religious families, meaning of the atheists who took the survey, most of them are coming from a Protestant background.
Deconverters. Interesting.
Deconverters. Catholicism was number 2 with 30% raised
what was
in
the
a
first
Catholic family. Protestant Christianity.
Oh, yeah, that tracks.
So we're all leaving Christianity. That was interesting.
That's very interesting.
Have you ever experienced a negative thing? Have you ever had a negative experience or discrimination because you're an atheist? And they said, like, have you experienced something negative in this area? So, for example, education, 30% of responders, 29% of responders said, yeah, I've experienced something bad with my atheism in school. 22% said I've experienced something negative with my employment. Mm-hmm. Number 1, where's the number 1 place people have had a negative experience because they were out as an atheist or
probably
whatever?
Their immediate or extended family?
Family's number 2. 55% of people said I've had a negative experience with my family. Number 1 is 58% with...
Oh, God.
I don't know that I would have gotten this. I don't think I would have.
58% of atheists have had a negative experience with just strangers. Is it strangers of just
like... It's not strange. Maybe.
People
Close.
who you talk to at the dog park who reveal themselves to be weird conservatives after you've known them for a year and you have to sort of grapple with that. Is that number 1?
No, it is not a survey of just you.
Personal...
Yes.
Oh, okay. This is weird. I don't like this survey then.
Number 1, social media, which seems obvious in hindsight because it's the one place you might say you're an atheist.
Yeah.
So of course you're going to get backlash.
I guess that is the one place I've gotten backlash for being an atheist. Because I was like, I've never, like my parents weren't thrilled, but they're fine. I haven't gotten any like negative... like anything that anybody would traditionally call a negative experience with somebody. Like I didn't get fired or lectured or whatever. Right. But
and I think about it, that's probably true for me too, because I'm about as out an atheist as you can be. And I don't get a lot of crap, mostly because I'm not part of anything. Right. You know what I mean? Like, what? I'm going to lose my friends over this?
Yeah.
No.
I probably get more shit for being a feminist than I do for being an atheist.
But it's like, yeah, my immediate family knows and nobody cares. My parents know and we just avoid the subject. So I don't get a lot of, and I don't work at a school or anything. So it's fine. So I guess social media is the one place I would get crap about it. Mm-hmm. Okay, this was, I think, the last thing 2 things that I wanted to highlight. Of the people who took the survey, what were the biggest policy issues that they cared about? So they said, like, do you very much care about this issue or like not at all care about this issue? And here's the surprising part to me. The last thing on the list by a long shot, like the thing people did not say was a high priority, was opposing religious displays on public property.
Oh, yeah. Nobody gives a fuck about that.
Nobody. 10 Commandments statues outside a courthouse. Among the atheists who took this survey, only half of them cared about it very much.
And I would definitely argue that before I started doing this podcast with you, I would definitely count myself among them. And really,
it's not a big deal. So I don't care
if you have shit on your thing. The problem comes then when that is used as precedent for something bigger.
Yeah. So what was Oh, please go on. Yeah.
Okay, wait. All right. So there's can you give me a number of things that people care about?
There were a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's like 12 things on this list.
Okay, I'm going to try from the top down. So
just name anything you think.
I'm going to say
order.
LGBTQ rights.
That was close to the bottom of the list. 82% said they care very much about LGBTQ equality. And I think, just to be clear, I think they're saying, should atheist groups go after this in court? Legal battles, which policy issues? Not in general. They're not saying only 80% care about LGBTQ equality. But what do you want groups to focus on when it comes to those types of issues?
Okay. So
actually, no, I take this back. I'm reading through this right now. Okay. We asked survey participants how important a number of policy issues were to them personally. Okay. So 81% said LGBTQ equality is very important to me personally. A bunch more, like 12%, said it's somewhat important to me. Mm-hmm. That was still lower than I would have hoped, but
sure. Okay, then probably reproductive rights.
Reproductive rights. So access to abortion and contraception is number 3 on the list.
Okay.
In terms of, I care about this, 86% said I very much care about those issues.
Okay.
And along the same lines, I would add comprehensive and medically accurate sex education is also at like 86%.
Yeah. Is another one like child abuse within the church or something like that? Or is that not, or are we talking more general shit?
I think protecting youth from religion-based harm was at 85%. So close. Yeah.
Climate change?
Climate change is at 85% as well. Protecting the environment and addressing climate change. You have not gotten the top 2.
Racial issues, racism.
I do not see racism on the list. Maybe it wasn't on this list because it's not necessarily atheist specific, dealing with it's not religion that makes people racist necessarily. So it's not the opposition coming from there.
Is it access to general health care?
That is number 2. Denial of health care based on religious beliefs. So Catholic hospitals saying we're not going to do abortions, or an employer saying, I guess, I'm not going to give you birth control access, things like that.
Why can I never get the number 1 of anything?
I was surprised by number 1. I don't think I would have gotten it as the number 1 thing everyone seems to care about more than anything else. By the way, denial of health care based on religious beliefs was at 88%. Said I very much care about this.
Yeah. I don't. Is it like something like animal abuse or something?
Not on the list here, probably because again,
immigration issues.
Nope. Same reason, I would argue. Maybe a Republican thing, but it's not a religious thing.
Okay.
Number 1.
Yeah.
Maintaining secular public schools, making sure religion doesn't infest public schools. 92% said that is a very important concern to me.
Yeah, that tracks. And that tracks to me. Like, if I saw that on a list, I'd be like, yes, absolutely. But I don't know if I would have just sort of generated that from my own brain, obviously.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue is, again, if you care about what are atheist specific issues, I would say 10 Commandments outside a courthouse is like an atheist specific issue. Only atheists who are like gung-ho activists seem to care about that sort of thing, even though I think it's important. Whereas keeping schools secular is something that everyone can get on board with.
Sure.
So, of course, you're going to get a lot of people saying, yeah, I take that very seriously. Right. So we shouldn't be surprised, I guess. And the last thing is we've read this is not part of the survey, but we've always seen these surveys about how we vote. And not religious people, the nuns, were about 25% of the American population. But in 2016, we were about 15% of the voting population.
Oh, okay.
We don't vote our weight. You know what I mean? And that's bad. But when it comes to like nuns don't always vote, but atheists definitely vote. And here's what they got from the survey here. They said about 95% of the people who took their survey were registered to vote. 87% said I voted in 2016, and 87% said I always or nearly always vote. So even if the nuns as a whole don't seem like they care, atheists or people who identify as explicitly non-theistic, no, they definitely care more so than everybody else, which is good. Like when there's more of us, that'll be even better.
Right.
But that was the upside. The whole report is like 60 pages. There's a lot of information. That link will be available to anyone interested. And again, just to be clear, this survey was not about what any group, including American atheists, ought to be doing. It's kind of, who do you represent? If you're an atheist group that cares about what a lot of people want, then fighting for secular schools would kind of be the thing you want to do, because you'll get a lot of support there. Whereas the sort of things some group like Freedom from Religion Foundation fights may not be appealing to atheists as a whole, but it is definitely appealing to the sort of people who would be part of FFRF.
Sure. Yeah, that's right.
Interesting survey. So it's the largest one. I think they got 34,000 participants, which, again, it's not scientific, but it's the most information we've ever gotten about atheists in America, as far as I've seen. So very interesting survey.
That's very cool.
And with that, that's all I got.
Okay, I have a couple of announcements. So, first of all, we are very, very close to hitting our next Patreon goal. So once we hit, let me find it. So we're about to watch a Kirk Cameron movie. And record that for the bonus feed. And we are about 30 or 40 donors away from also recording, watching a fictional movie about Jesus, either the Mel Gibson one or Jesus Christ Superstar. Guess which one I want?
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's coming up. And we're also really close to doing some kind of call-in show, which we need to figure out. That might have to be, that might have to be a post-COVID thing, because we probably should be in the same room. But unclear. Anyway, so that is all on its way. We're also close to watching We Believe in Dinosaurs and recording an episode for the main feed. We have almost 800 reviews. Once we get 1,000, we will do that. So
those reviews. Yeah,
so you can log on to iTunes, rate, review, subscribe, and then Patreon if you're interested. For $3, you get, I don't know, how many bonus episodes do you think?
There's a lot of bonus episodes.
My husband and I have been recording bonus episodes about movies where people are trapped places and then recording them for it's been genuinely so much fun. And it's one of the reasons we started the Twin Peaks podcast, because it's just been really, really fun to do. And also I'm going to read. Oh, did you see that we had some sort of like weird anti-Jewish review?
Yeah, that one was surprising to me.
Yeah,
you showed me that on Twitter or something. I had not seen that. That was interesting. That's a new one. That's
new, because neither of us has Jewish ancestry or any.
Yeah.
Anyway, whatever. So I'm going to read a 5-star review instead of that 1-star review. The title of this is cut off, and I'm on the edge of my seat. It's from Morcius, Morcius. Came for the recovery, stayed for ellipses. Don't know, will never know. The iTunes review platform is flawed. 5 stars, a refreshing take on the slow crumbling of society into a neo-Christian theocracy by a couple of fellow millennials. Woo, millennials. It's good to know that I'm not the only one desperately holding on to the remnants of their sanity. It's always a good day when these two post. They need to the need to have this podcast. I'm confused. Oh, the amount of stars for various things. So the need for this podcast is 1 star. Hemant's watchdog coverage of Christian America is 5 stars. Jessica's ability to encapsulate my reaction by cursing is 10 stars. So you're lucky. I love it. Her for once. Usually the 1-star reviews tend to be blamed on me. So
That is
it's
awesome.
really nice that I can impact the curve in a in a positive way.
Very nice.
Hammett, where can we find you?
I am at Hammett Meta, or you can go to friendlyatheist.com. I'm at Hammett Meta on Twitter, friendlyatheist.com otherwise.
You can always email us at friendlyatheistpodcast.com if you have questions, concerns, thoughts, prayers. You can find me on Twitter at Blueberry. That's BLUEBURIE. Patreon.com/friendlyatheistpodcast is where you can support what we're doing. And yeah, that's it.
All right. We'll talk to you all next week.
See you, Hammett.
Bye.